Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's episode, we want to grade Fanatics' first year of owning Topps and maybe answer a few of your questions that you left us on our past videos. Let's introduce who we have today. My name is Scott. I have a YouTube channel called Scotty V Cards. We have Phil Filmington, has a great YouTube channel as well. Ty, aka Teapot, has a great YouTube channel as well on the Market Movers channel. Then we have Jeff. He has a great YouTube channel as well, Blabbing About Slabbin', along with Chris, who's not here. Hey, Chris. Hope you're doing well, man. And we're going to talk about Topps. We want to talk about Topps and discuss if they did a good job this year, bad job this year. Realistically, this is Fanatics' first attempt at running a sports card company. Obviously, they brought people in who are very knowledgeable of the industry. But when you start a new company in the way they did, it can be a little bit challenging to get things rolling. So let's just turn this over very quickly to Jeff. What would you give Fanatics grade-wise? Let's go F through A. Like, what are you giving them? You don't have to give, like, all your answers right away. We can talk about it, but what would you say in one letter grade is what they received this year?
I'm giving them a B for their first year in the hobby. So some pluses and minuses we can get into, but I'm going with a B. So there it is.
Okay, Phil.
B minus.
Ty.
Somewhere right in that ballpark. I'm going to go B.
Okay, I think a B minus is fair. If you would have asked me 3 months ago, I probably would have said like a C minus. But I think they've done a few things really well recently. So let's talk about what we liked and didn't like. I'll go first. I think their marketing approach for baseball cards has absolutely been better than we've ever seen in baseball cards. At least I've ever seen. I can't say as a whole. I wasn't around in the 90s. They did a commercial recently for this Tom Brady Bowman Chrome card at a Bowman draft. And while it might annoy people, they had 3 Hall of Famers. I believe it was Larry Walker, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., maybe Pedro Martinez. Who was the third? Is that who it was?
Yep.
And it was cool. They brought that in. They were talking about baseball cards. I think that was great. They did some commercials with Julio Rodriguez I thought were really fun and unique and interesting. It's a baking show for cards. These type of things are when we're 10Xing the hobby. Maybe we should stop saying 10Xing the hobby. But when we're growing the hobby, having more fun commercials this way is very unique. If you go back and watch the commercials Topps did, some of them are really hard to watch all the way through. And these have done a good job of not only being high quality, but also being very entertaining and educational, in my opinion. Phil, what have you liked so far? We'll get to our dislikes in a moment. What have you liked?
Yeah, something we covered in the last episode was that they were pretty quick and open and genuine with addressing a PR disaster that was specific to the backdoored one-of-one cards that were never intended to be distributed and put in packs. There's some other examples too where I feel like they did come to the rescue, and in some cases with a solution that was commensurate to the crime or the wrongdoing itself, which I liked. I liked some of the cool gimmicks this year. So not so much the bounties, which we'll talk about, but the Taco Fractor I kind of like. I liked how they continued the Topps Chrome buyback with the MVPs. I liked how they eliminated some sets that just weren't really doing a whole lot for collectors, investors, and breakers who they cater towards. And I like how they did catch up with the release schedule. I know we're giving them a lot of crap with Stadium Club still, but last year was a disaster. Some of that had to do with supply chain issues. And they were able to get through in sets like, Topps Update that usually comes out in mid to late October. They hit that, and they hit the mark with Topps Chrome, which in a couple of years prior was delayed. And they got that out towards the end of July or the first week of August. So those are some things that I liked.
Okay. Ty?
Yeah, all good topics. I like the MLB debut patches. I think it's awesome. As well as the first bases or whatever they're going to be putting in Inception. Tons of athlete engagement. We're seeing baseball players who are collectors themselves show a lot of interest. There was the time when Michael Rubin called up Devin Booker for this girl in a card shop and had him say hi. The big Wemby experience. So across all the sports that they're getting their hands into, they're driving a lot of cool athlete experiences. I actually like the cross sport promotion, like the Brady thing. I think the prices are a little silly. They're definitely using their marketing engine to promote that, but I do like the multi-sport approach and pulling in some of those other athletes to maybe draw more people into baseball cards. Maybe, maybe not. But you never know. Somebody getting into a product like Bowman Draft might kind of get the itch after that and start getting more curious about baseball overall if they weren't before. And then, like you guys said, kind of trimming the fat on some of the products that maybe were a little stale or outdated. Marketing has been fantastic, and I think the response to the PR stuff has been about as good as they could do. So all good points there as well.
Okay, Jeff, what do you think?
Hard to add too much. You guys have really hit on all the ways that they've excelled this year. I think one thing I would like to add is when we first heard about Fanatics buying the licenses up, which is what they did first before they purchased the card manufacturer, and Topps in this case, there was a little bit of trepidation, like what's going to happen? Are we going to lose Bowman Draft? Are we going to lose Bowman Chrome? Are we going to lose Topps Flagship? And while those issues seemed to be quelled when they purchased Topps and they knew we were still going to have these names, we're still going to have the ability to print cards the same way, there was still a little bit of worry, at least on my part, how this big company coming in is going to handle keeping the through line of the history, the nature of the card industry. And I think they did a really good job with that. They haven't missed a beat. I mean, there have been some missteps along the way, as Phil alluded to, but I think they've addressed those really well. And I love the marketing. You mentioned some of the specifics. They've gotten some of the best players in the game to do it, which is great. They had Acuna collecting Ohtani cards for the MVP buyback, which I think is another great idea, gimmick, marketing tool, whatever you want to call it. And with the Taco Fractor, maybe I didn't agree with exactly how it went, but I thought the idea was awesome, where you tie some performance into something you can pull out of a pack. It's like a kind of a golden ticket thing. And so I think I'd love to see more of that. So I think they did a really good job in all those areas for their first year.
Great. I do want to add one more thing that I like that they've done. I think they've done a significantly better job on inserts. They've made inserts more rare, more special, more unique. Panini's always had eaten Topps' lunch doing that, but Topps is doing just as good, in my opinion. They haven't caught on yet, and maybe the designs aren't perfect, but at least they're doing things that way. The Celebración cards out of 2023 Topps update were awesome. They were great. Numbered to 99. I actually like that they hard numbered one of the super short prints instead of just having it be a super short print, because that can get crazy fast. But I do think they did a great job with their inserts. Phil, do you have anything you wanted to add on there?
No, Topps Chrome update definitely surprised me. The last few years, people always it's like they act surprised, like, oh wow, this checklist sucks, this product sucks. It's like, yeah, it has sucked. The ROI has sucked. Last year it was extremely bad, but since maybe 2019, but probably 2018, you weren't able to open that and actually pull anything decent. But this year they made some steps into turning that into a real hobby product. And it's not just a Celebración, but they also had some other kind of cool inserts, and some were rare.
The Let's Go were really rare.
Yeah, exactly. And that's they're tapping into a new model that they really hadn't taken advantage of yet, and one that I certainly liked. So just wanted to second that. People
are buying so many Donruss blasters just looking for downtowns. Topps can take a page out of that book real easily, and I think they will. I think this Fanatics run Topps is so much more in tune to the hobby, and they're very good at answering questions, and they're very agile compared to what Topps used to be. So I do think that is great. Any other positive stuff before we share some negatives? And then I have some questions I want to ask you to pick your brain a little bit. Any other positives? Okay, so let's go with negatives. What have you disliked about what Topps has done? I personally have disliked the fact that they've had issues with superfractors in 2 out of the 3 biggest releases of the year. They've done things where they put multiple superfractors in, and on top of that, this backdoor situation is tough. I think that we have to say, yeah, that's a growing pain, hopefully, and that's not going to be a continuous issue. But that's something I personally have been a little bit underwhelmed by. I do want to point out I was very critical of taco fractors on my YouTube channel. Don't regret my takes on that. I really don't. If they would have let us know about you could win a prize with them, it might have felt a little bit different, especially the taco tie into the World Series. Maybe I wouldn't have been so negative. But that's actually more of a positive now. So I want to retract that off the record. But I do think that they're still figuring out how to figure out superfractors, which is like the easiest thing to figure out in my opinion. Phil.
All right, let's lay into them. So superfractors, we can't forget also about some of the things that they didn't disclose. They screwed up the configuration of Topps Update, made people think they were going to get a certain amount of packs, and they really weren't. And
yeah, that's true.
Okay, yes, they had a plan for that, and they resolved that, I guess. Topps Stadium Club, same thing. They had those out on pre-order, and then all of a sudden, hey, yeah, we don't have them ready for you, and we're going to refund everybody. At least they did that, right? But it still doesn't make it a positive, right? So they're still making mistakes. They're certainly still making mistakes. QC probably hasn't improved a whole lot. There were a lot of sets last year where it was really bad. There's a lot of sets this year where it was really bad. So that is still a problem that they might not have prioritized yet. The whole notion, the 10X, the 10Xing the hobby, and I know that really started a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, but that's just sales jargon. That's just hype. There's nothing behind that. There's no roadmap behind that. There's no plan to make that happen. There's no metrics. Like, how are we going to quantify 10X? Is that number of people? Is that number of sales? Number of profits? Like, you don't care. That's not real. That's a bunch of BS. Redemptions still exist. I know it's early, right? We've got to wait. They've only really started to control this thing for probably, I don't know, 12, 16 months, depending on like which aspect of the business we're talking about. So yes, they have Bowman Draft. I haven't seen a whole lot of redemptions, but you're still seeing them in sets. You're still seeing sticker autos, which is something I think they also aspire to get rid of. There's also some gimmicks that I liked, some gimmicks that I didn't like so much. The frozen fractors, absolutely laughed at. The retro fractors, some people liked them, most people didn't. This Tom Brady thing, great, I think, but it's a little scary right now when you hype something so much and you're spending so much of your marketing budget on like the short-term success of a product because they're concerned with, it selling at release. That just makes it so when all of this explodes, it's just so much more devastating for the people that actually bought into the concept and own the cards. So that's the dangerous part. And a lot of times I try to give balanced, measured feedback where I take into account the perspective of collectors, which I'm not really. Take in the perspective of fanatics, which I'm not fanatics. But like as an investor, they did some cool things last year with Logo Fractor, with Topps Chrome Cosmic. This year, they didn't kill those brands, but they still printed Cosmic 3 times as much as last year. So like, hold on, guys. Like, this is a really cool set. You didn't like when you realized Topps Chrome Sapphire was awesome. You didn't immediately 3x the print run of that. Logo Fractor, though, it seems to be like not printed a whole lot. I haven't run the numbers on that. In Cosmic, people are still buying it. People are still spending a lot of money on it. So I guess they haven't killed that yet either. But I guess the hype, the bounties, like all of this stuff that's causing a short-term pump in wax prices that eventually goes away. Like that doesn't do much for me as like a long-term hobbyist. Any marketing hype actually doesn't do anything for me as a long-term hobbyist. Somebody who owns cards, wants them to grow in value, wants more people to join the hobby, wants to stay in the hobby. This is, it is wearing me a little bit, and them catering to the gamblers and realizing that this might not even be a kid's hobby anymore, right? Because they can't afford it. Oh, well, this is our target market. We see it with our YouTube demographics, right? 35 to 45, you want to stretch it out, maybe 25 to 55. You don't really get a whole lot else outside of that, right? I don't know if you guys noticed that, blabbing about Slavin. I don't know what Sports Card Investor looks like, but that could be interesting. Scott, what are your demographics?
Sports Card Investor might trend younger, actually. I wouldn't be surprised because
it's pretty broad.
Jeff actually does a good job of doing that. My analytics, I can tell you them right now, but I definitely do not have any viewers under the age of 18. But about 70% is between 35 and 65 plus.
Well, I think that there's a lot to be discussed when we're talking about how Fanatics is trying to grow the market. As we mentioned, there are a lot of positives in terms of using the athletes in commercials. Another thing that I know they're trying to do is trying to have the product in more places. It's not like when I was a kid when they're at every grocery store and gas station, things like that, but they are trying to have it through lids and more at the ballpark. So they're trying to reach out. I know when they were talking about the 10 timesing, they were trying to relate it to the amount of sports fans there are. And people attending games and trying to correlate that. If we can just get a certain percentage of those people into the hobby or aware of sports cards, then we'll make the hobby boom, which may be, and I know they're on that route, but prices are definitely a detracting factor from young people and kids getting into the market. So I don't know if there's something that can address with that. The other thing they were talking about with, or the other thing they did with expanding the market is increasing the print runs. I mean, these, especially flagship, are just printed enormously now. So that really sort of dilutes the value, as we've talked about before. I don't think that's a long-term solution for growing the hobby, is just by continuing to up print runs, even on sets that seem to be successful, like Phil mentioned. They start to up the print runs on that. So yeah, I think they have a few things that they need to try to figure out what is in the best interest. Obviously, they're a business, so they want to do what's in the best interest of them and their stakeholders. But as far as what's in the best interest of the hobbyist, which I think is a great term that Phil said, that's kind of encompassing the collectors and the investors, everybody involved, in what the hobbyist best interests are. So I still think they're working on that. The taco fractor I thought was a miss, just because, as you said, Scott, we didn't know what we were going for. So there are a lot of people that paid a huge amount of money for those because it was intimated that there was going to be some sort of big reveal. I know Ozzy Albies had leaked out, oh, you're going to want to have these. And it turns out it was very limited as far as the people who were able to win based on those taco fractors. So I think they're learning lessons from all of these things that they're trying, or at least I hope they are. So I feel like the trajectory is going in the right direction.
Okay, Ty, what's your thoughts?
Word of the day this week is intimated. Thank you, Jeff. I have a list of things I'm kind of indifferent about. The bounties, which I do think Fanatics has had a hand in one way or another. I'm pretty indifferent about the bounties. Like we said before, they don't move the needle for me, but I think it's pretty cool if some kid pulls a rare card, or, you know, that they can get a huge payday. Taco fractors, whatever. I was a little cynical about those initially. I guess it is what it is. I don't think anybody should eat Taco Bell. Bowman retro fractors, fine. Like another card I really wouldn't buy. And we saw some of the prices on the Babe Ruth, and I would just go buy a Babe Ruth card, like an actual Babe Ruth card. And the Golden Mirror SSP is more of a mixed bag. I like that they put the SSP on the back of the card. I did not love that they made it for every player in the checklist instead of just having a sub list of image variations for the main checklist. Dislike the Frozen Fractors. I didn't like anything about it. Negative numbering doesn't make any sense. The cards didn't look very cool. That was kind of a miss for me. Sorry, Scott, I didn't like the Halloween parallels. I thought they looked tacky. I didn't like them. Stadium Club still not being out is one of my biggest beefs. And I also didn't like that they haven't acquired Panini. I really thought that was going to happen this year. I thought we could move beyond all this contentious litigation and back and forth and just trying to beat each other up and guerrilla warfare one another, and just work out a deal for the good of everybody, including Panini, and figure it out. But don't know who's to blame there. And then I would just say I disagree a little bit. I know where you're coming from, Phil, in saying that there's no strategy, or they don't have a plan, or, you know, more than anything, I'll agree that's business speak. They're trying to just speak big. But Ruben did quote at the time, it was based on number of people that they had said they thought had bought or sold a card in the preceding year. I think he had quoted 300,000 people by their estimates had bought or sold a card. And so the number they're trying to get to is 3 million people who do that. And when you think about 113 million tuning in to watch the Super Bowl every year, 3 million people buying or selling a sports card in a given year really doesn't seem like a stretch. So I think a lot of the things they've been doing are all geared and oriented around trying to ensure that this wasn't a big multi-billion-dollar mistake that they've gone all in many ways. And in order to do that, they do need to keep driving the number of people in the hobby, which is, you know, why I think it's a little bit funny when people get all fist shaky on social media about, you know, the collector, and I'm a collector, and you don't care about the collector and whatever. It's like, I said it on our Cards on the Table video on the SCI channel, like, it's a business. Like, just suck it up. They're going to do what's best for a business and keep driving it forward. And that might mean some of the collector crowd ends up getting left behind. I'm not saying I like it or that that's the way it should be, but that is the reality. I think they're going to draw a new crowd, and they're shifting and changing the hobby, and people are going to have to get used to it or find another hobby or just buy older cards. I don't know.
So I do want to say I do like the golden mirrors. I know Jeff and Chris don't as well. I know, Chris for sure, Jeff, you can tell me if you disagree. But I like the golden mirrors because they increase print runs so much. They'd either have to drastically increase the print run of those short prints, or they would just make them really hard to pull, and maybe that's fine. But it's fun if you collect really random players. Like, let's say Andre Drummond for you, Ty. Let's say he had an image variation in some flagship basketball product. Would that be cool? Like, I think it's fun to be able to chase certain players and to have rare cards of everybody and not just this chosen 5 players like Trout, Betts, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman every single year. Like, I think that's cool. And so I disagree a little bit, and that's nitpicking. But just a question, like, does anybody else, Phil, what's your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I think they're okay. I guess to your point, if everybody's going to have 800,000 base cards, then why not give each of those players some sort of chase that's a little bit new and interesting? And maybe next year they print even more of those things. I did pull one, and you couldn't really, it just didn't look like a unique card, and it was weird to pull like a meaningful non-rookie of a player that doesn't matter.
That's it's like that with the parallel, right?
You're right. But I guess like with the parallel, at least I would have known by first, like, okay, it's a parallel. I see it coming. Versus like this.
I pulled the camo parallel of somebody last year, like Tony Gonsolin or something, and I was like, okay, like cool. I'm just gonna send it to ComC, and somebody else will want it. But like, that's one of the things that was kind of sacred about the image variation list, is it wasn't all the parallels and everything.
Yeah. If you view it as a hit, you hit higher, I guess you could say, on average. Yeah. But I will also mention that, did we give them credit for the 1-of-1 rookie patch auto, by the way?
Yeah.
We
did.
Okay.
Debut patch, yeah.
Perfect. Great. Glad we did, because I do have
a I did.
You did? No, I did. Yeah, great. Perfect. We're all one person. So, but Ty, I will say, I do not like the gambling. It feels like that's what they're pushing. They really want people to open up boxes, but the boxes have no ROI. It's just like, hey, you should keep buying our stuff. Hey, it's like a drug dealer. It kind of, that's my feeling of them right now. Like, maybe that's how Topps was too, but I never really got that same vibe. They had good deals on their website for boxes that were super cheap, and I don't think we'll ever see deals again, but that might be a product of what the hobby currently is with breakers and people wanting to buy product. But it does feel like the gambling aspect's being pushed, Fanatics Live's being pushed. I wouldn't be surprised if some sort of regulation has to come out in some way in regards to taxes and reporting, and they have to follow new guidelines because the way things are rolling, which is kind of worrisome to me. But they are taking the hobby and not making it a hobby necessarily, not the traditional word of hobby. And I do think they run the risk of losing a very strong base of collectors. I know we kind of said, I agree with you, Ty. They bought this as a business. They're running it as a business, and they should, because they have to do well with the business. But I do think they run a risk of losing people. And I think they already have lost some, but I think it could be a real problem in the future.
Yeah, Ty brought up something in addition to correcting me, which that's good for the metric. I didn't know. Fuck. The bounties that I'm bashing them for are listed. Those are like DA card roll bounties for the most part, but I do believe they had some role in inspiring them, as Ty pointed out. Like, there's probably some sort of connection or kickback or something. So even though they weren't Fanatics bounties, the one I was talking about specifically, they still kind of are, I believe, at the end of the day. One of the risks now is because they're kind of doubling down on, like, breaking is how we're running our business. Like, that is the future. Is you've got sets like Topps Heritage. Some of these sets are really popular. Stadium Club's another one. And it's just not, it doesn't really get broken through that channel, right? It's more of like a personal rip, right? Collectors are buying that. Set collectors are buying these products. Longtime collectors are buying these products. But like, I don't feel like they're going to value them like they will Topps Chrome, because it's got an HTA component now, and a lot of these other sets that are just more expensive, easier to rip. Time is money, less sorting, and shipping is so much easier with this stuff, fewer cards. So it's just a win-win for everybody. Breaker is going to want that stuff, and they're going to want more of it, and they're going to be able to sell it quicker. So Topps Heritage Minor League, guys, was eliminated this year. And that was actually one of my favorite products to open, on-card autographs. Like, if you didn't want to like muster up the money for Bowman, but you still wanted prospects and to get meaningful licensed cards of them. You could get like in a 17 Topps Heritage Minor League has an Acuna card, and especially before they have their first red ink card in rookies the next year or a couple years later, you're able to get like their first Heritage autograph, which is really cool too. So and that was something like $35-50. So they scrap that. Like, are they going to scrap Heritage at some point too? I don't think they will, but like, where are they going to draw the line? Like, how much are they going to start catering these products to breakers too? Because now Bowman Draft for the first time has an HDA edition. So like, how much more of that are we going to see? And what's the distribution of hits going to look like? It wasn't a big problem this year, I don't feel, but next year, like, how is that going to change and evolve over time?
Phil, I want to point out that is my favorite set to open too, because you can open up 2 boxes for $60 and you don't feel like you just got completely screwed over. And they have it's actually a decent ceiling, right? It's obviously a minor league product, but you can pull real one autographs of like Ellie De La Cruz. Wander Franco had some that were going for decent money. Acuna had some that were going for decent money. That was fun. So I do agree that's sad. And I'm always calling for less sets, but I'm meaning more of like, not the legacy sets. And I don't want to say Heritage Minor League is a legacy set, but it's been around since at least 2011. Trout has a minors Heritage card as well, and others. I think Arenado does too, and other players. So
to Phil's point about catering to breakers, the other thing we saw Fanatics include this year was Breakers Delight boxes, which get rid of the base cards entirely, where you only get 10 cards or a dozen cards from refractors on up. And I know they were kind of testing the waters with that. I wonder how much that's gonna affect things going forward, because that makes life much easier for everybody involved in the process. Sorting, shipping, going through the amount of boxes you can get through in a break versus something like Heritage, where you've got a ton of cards in a pack. And yeah, some breakers will just flip through them, but the people that typically like Heritage would like to see the players, like to see the cards. So it's not a very breaker friendly product. The other thing I wanted to say was when Fanatics first took over the company, or first took over Topps in the industry, there was a lot of talk from the Fanatics end about transparency and how they were going to release print run numbers and make everything accessible, which we all thought was great. I don't know if anybody really believed it, but I think now that Fanatics, maybe when they got in there, they realized that's not how we're going to do it. We're not going to make that happen, but that would be great, because I think that would go a long way towards helping the collectors, helping the people know what sets they want to go after, what cards they're interested in, just to see those numbers. But again, I think Fanatics is probably thinking that might scare people away, but transparency would be awesome.
That's the pack odds available on Topps is, I think that's where Teapot thought you were going. Like, that transparency is huge. Panini doesn't even give them, right? Even on the packs themselves.
But I was mad that they got rid of it on the packaging personally. Yeah. I don't always have my phone, or like, I literally was at the store recently, wanted to buy something and it's not on the box, and I'd left my phone at home by mistake. And I was like, forget about it. Just chuck it back on the shelf.
So, and they might actually, but they might release it like, did they put it up there like a few days before release too? So it's actually even more transparency technically. And that way you don't have to buy the product to know. Or in some cases, it used to be like on the side of a blaster, but you don't have to go to a store to see it. It's really hard to get that data. Like, for me to get that data in the past, and maybe Scott too, I would have to like watch people's YouTube breaks. Came out when they show, they're like, okay, take a clip of this, freeze the screen.
It's like detective work.
Right.
So from that perspective, you feel like they've done a lot for that.
That was a big positive for me in
That's
transparency,
good.
in my opinion.
Especially, what about for
and they'll show you all the formats next to each other too. So that and versus like, oh, retail hasn't come out yet. A lot of the times it's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks between hobby and retail. So right away, like, okay, I'm looking for short prints. I want to buy the hangers, or I'm looking for just gold parallels. The blasters are good for that. Okay, so for black and this and that, like, so Stryker can do his breakdown better when he does those videos, or Scott.
That's more of Stryker's thing, like a $1 to card thing for sure. But I will say you can copy and paste those or download it into your own spreadsheet, and you can do a whole bunch with it, which you never could have done without hours and hours of work. But I do want to ask a question. So I want to pose some questions to you all. We'll try to go as quick as we can. But my first question is, do you think that the baseball card hobby is better right now than it would have been if Fanatics never bought Topps? Or do you think we've been in a better place with just Tops, the way they were operating? Ty, I see you shaking your head.
I think it's better now. I think the marketing aspect alone is better, and the new innovation. I've been bullish about the Fanatics acquisition all along, and I'm still bullish about it. Like I said before, I do think it's gonna. I think they're gonna push the envelope on different things. They're gonna do things like they already have that will make us scratch our heads and say, well, maybe they don't really understand collectors or baseball enthusiasts or things like that. Or maybe they do, and they're trying to 10x or bring in more people or whatever, however you want to put it. But overall, I think things could have gotten simultaneously stale and worn out between both Panini and Tops, and I'm very excited about stuff coming over to Tops for football and basketball, and I think they're going to try a bunch of things. And this time next year, we could be having the same conversation of what we loved, what we didn't care about, and what was amiss. And that's just the nature of it. But at least they're trying new things, and it's not going to be stale and recycled year over year.
Okay. Phil or Jeff, do you disagree with anything Ty said?
I'd like to say that the biggest thing that surprised me when I first came back to the hobby after leaving it in the 90s was the fact that there was no competition, which was crazy. While I was gone, each license went to specific companies. So you only had Tops making baseball card products. Of course, they have got a million different sets, but I think one of the things that really helped push the innovation, even in the junk wax era, was having that competition where you had Fleer and Donruss, and then Upper Deck kind of came in and made it sort of a premium baseball card. So I really missed that aspect of it. And I feel like what Ty's saying about getting stale, it definitely seemed like it was going in that direction. So this doesn't put the competition back in. And in fact, it's going to reverse it eventually, because I think Fanatics is going to have all the licensees or the licenses from the professional sports leagues, except hockey. I think hockey still is going to stay with Upper Deck, but it doesn't take away the competition, but at least they have a motivation to grow the hobby. Even though it's business related, at least they have a motivation to innovate and create and put new things in. So I do feel like it's better now than it would have been if it had just been Tops.
Okay. Phil, any different thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. Like the non-competitive industry position that Fanatics has wasn't too much different than Tops. Fanatics is just doing a better job taking advantage of it, right? So like this is like a pack that you get in like an 18 update blaster when Fanatics wasn't in charge yet. And it's like a stupid card. Who cares? So I think if I was to sum it up, because there's a lot of different perspectives, I think if you're a vintage collector or a modern singles collector, I think Fanatics being involved is slightly better versus a Top situation. I think if you are a singles investor from any era, I think you're in a slightly better position now with Fanatics at the helm. I think if you're a hobby shop, it depends what kind of hobby shop you have. I think if you're a breaker, it depends what kind of a breaker you are. And I think if you're somebody like me, who's in a position with a little business on the side that doesn't source product directly from Fanatics, I think you're much worse off. But that's just one perspective. So overall, it's going to be better for most people.
Are you worried that they're going to lose the base collectors that have been driving the sports card hobby for the last 20 years? Who has stuck around through that dead era we talked about last episode of 2010 to 2019. Do you think they're running the risk of losing them because of the price of wax and the marketing, or is that a non-issue to you?
I think a lot of the factors that are driving up wax are actually the environment itself. Made a little video on that. Clearly, Fanatics, some games they're playing, and some of the hype, and there's almost like unwavering positivity with the people that are opening their products, influencers. There's a lot more hype now. There's a lot fewer people that are at a high position in the hobby that are kind of questioning Fanatics and demanding better of them. So that would be the part where I think that Fanatics probably has some ability to make things more expensive and get away with it versus Tops. But I don't know. I mean, like, we almost like titled this video like, how do we rate tops this year? And so people are still kind of calling them like the same thing. Like, people are still blaming tops, screw tops on Twitter. You see it on Blowout. So tops is still there, even though they're not. So I don't think that'll, like, when you first asked the question, I'm like, well, because tops is gone. Like, well, no, their brands are still around. A lot of their people are still around. Some of those guys are probably still making some decisions. Maybe they're not as important as they used to be, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about that.
Okay.
Per se.
Jeff, what about you? You're a collector. You've always been a collector more than an investor. You invest, but you've always identified as a collector, I feel like. Do you feel like they're going to lose collectors?
Well, I think in terms of collecting, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking earlier about you like to see the stuff you buy hold some value, right? You don't want to just buy it and then have it be worth nothing. So that definitely plays a role in wanting the hobby to continue, because you do want to have some semblance of value besides just the intrinsic personal value you put on those cards. But I don't know. I don't think that's going to be a huge deal about losing people that haven't already left with, in the last couple of years, the proliferation of breaking and how big of a part of it it's become, and the gambling aspect. There's going to be still people kind of grumpy about it, I think, but I think the people that are going to have left because of that are already gone.
Okay. All right. Ty, do you want to share any last final thoughts on that question or anything else before we end this video?
I just think Fanatics tops, they've been under the microscope, so to speak. People are kind of all over them, maybe more than what they were tops previously, and maybe even more than they have been over Panini, even though Panini's caught their fair share of criticism. To me, if I'm Fanatics, that's a good sign. It's a really good sign, because it's a lot of attention and people have high expectations. They've talked a big talk. People are expecting them to walk the walk. And I just always laugh at, I don't know, try to be reasonable. You know, people just, I get it. There's a lot of money involved. It's also a big company. They're still trying to take the training wheels off with a bunch of new things. This is new for Fanatics. They brought tops people in. They stole designers from Panini. They've done a lot of different things, and they're trying not to cross any legal boundaries and, you know, check all the boxes with that type of stuff. And so just be reasonable. Don't assume that if you were in their shoes, you could do any better job, because I'm sure most of us couldn't. So
I don't know.
What it is. But I think it's pretty funny. I think there's this like prevailing theme of massively hyperbolic speech about such and such a thing is going to, this is it. You've lost collectors, or, you know, you're destroying the hobby, or you're whatever, like, just knock it off with that talk. Nobody's leaving. I mean, some people might leave. Anybody can leave anytime they want, maybe, unless it's kind of Hotel California. But I don't buy it. I don't buy that Tom Brady being inserted into Bowman draft is going to cause this big exodus of disconnect with diehard Bowman drafters, and it's all over. And it's not over. It is like a drug. They're going to keep coming back for more. They're not going to give it up. They're just going to be mad if they don't get what they want. And in some ways, we never will. We'll never get exactly what we want.
They did the same thing with Russell Wilson. They did the same thing with Johnny Manziel. It is what it is. It's good. But I would like to see Phil. I think Phil could do a good job running Fanatics in the future, Phil. I'm putting in your application for it, man.
Yeah. I'll give it a shot. Get right on
just
that.
make sure your LinkedIn profile's up to date.
I think if Phil was in charge, I think we'd be in a better place. All right. I think that's a good place to end it for today. Thank you for listening. If you listened this far into the video, we appreciate it. And if you do want to, please leave us some questions in the comments of this video, or message Ty on our Instagram, Spitballin Cards. We want to do a mailbag type video. We will look at questions from both Instagram and from YouTube. We want to have a couple episodes where we share our thoughts on things you're wondering, because that's always a great way to learn more about what people think and the hobby. Other than that, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.